There are one or two settings within PicturesToExe in relation to keyframes that I always set because I believe it makes it easier to follow the animation process. Let's have a look at those settings because it's quite important that you and I are both looking at the same information on screen, starting with keep full slide duration. By default, you can see that each of these slides has a slide duration of 5 seconds. If I move from the slide list to the timeline, you can see how that 5 seconds is made up. Starting here, for example, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So what's being measured there is the moment that balloon picture appears on screen or starts to appear on screen. So it takes into account the fade on and the 3 seconds it's on screen, but it doesn't take into account the fade off screen, and yet we can see the balloon until the final milliseconds of the time it's on screen. So what I'd like to do is suggest a change. So instead of the slide duration showing us 5 seconds here, it shows us 7 seconds, which includes the fade on, the time on screen, and the fade off. We find that in the settings, preferences, and the project tab. We need to tick show full slide duration and keep full slide duration. Now while we're in this window, I'm going to suggest you also remove the tick to the scaling of keyframes. What that does is, if we set up a careful piece of animation and we'd measured all the keyframes and got them all looking sweet, and then maybe we increase the slide duration from 10 seconds to 15 seconds, it's going to scale or move all of those keyframes. And in most of the animation that I create, that's a hindrance rather than a help. So I'm going to suggest that you untick that box. But just before I click OK, look at the slide duration here, because when I do and we apply show full slide duration, you can see it will automatically take into account the fade on, the time on screen, and the fade off. And that's particularly important when we're working with video. Whenever we open up an image such as this one into the Objects and Animation screen, what we get is a view of just this image. We get to see the full slide duration, the fade on, the time the image is on the screen or the video, and the fade off. So if I select this image and open up the Objects and Animation screen, the first keyframe here is set to 15 seconds. If I put my cursor at the end, 22, so you can see we've got the 7 seconds reflected, taking into account the fade on, the time on screen, and the fade off. But I find it much easier to have these keyframes measure from 0 for every single image. And the setting is down here in the tools. Very quick to set. You've even got a keystroke if you remember it. But if I remove the tick, now I'm measuring the keyframes from 0 to whatever my slide duration is for the project I'm working on. So if I come out of this image and I go into this one, I'm still viewing the keyframes from 0, and I find that a lot easier, and I suggest you follow suit so we're both looking at the same thing.